good in the universe greater than we are, and we can what? We can use it. That's why we are here and in this way of life. And we are not here by chance. We are here by divine appointment. And I extend this to our viewing audience that tuned in at this moment in time as we look at invisible acts of power. Now, Carolyn Myss wrote a wonderful book several years ago called Invisible Acts of Power, and I devoured it because it's so wonderful to have an author who embraces our way of life. Today, we're looking at grace, intuition, and power, those elements that make up the spiritual life. The grace to know that we didn't do anything, we didn't earn anything, we are here by an act of grace. And those moments where we know energetically that it's, I have to surrender here. I have to let go here. I've got to just absolutely turn away from it so that I can open the space to allow God to do what God does best, and that is that state of grace, where those moments, those amazing, luminous, miraculous moments that come in can do what they do best by means of each and every one of us, because we are co-creators with God. And Carolyn said that she was in her apartment and she was kind of looking out, and she noticed across the way that there was a bus stop, and there was a young man with his baggy pants, and the look, and all the way down, and on the ground, and he was pierced everywhere. And she said, I just realized, I turned into my mother when I said, what is the world coming to? Look at him. Those baggy pants that are falling off of him, and those piercings and the eyebrows and everywhere else. What is going on? Oh my, she said, at that moment, I totally turned into my parents. And she said, as I was observing this scene, I saw an older, elderly lady, and she had these boxes, and she was crossing the street, and she was in the crosswalk. He jumped up, he ran to her, he said, may I help you with those? Very graciously. And she said, oh, thank you, and she gave them to him. And then he helped her across the street and helped her on to the bus. And then he boarded the bus. And she said, I am standing there judging this appearance, and within the soul of this young man is the energy, and we call it the energy of Christ consciousness, the energy of love. The energy of that moment where grace surrounded both of them, and how the woman, the elderly woman, went on her way. What did she carry with her from that exchange? She may have never thought of it again. What did she carry with her in that exchange? One of my favorite stories is the Good Samaritan, where he was walking, he was walking along, and he was robbed, and he was beaten, and he was tossed on the side of the road and left for dead. Suddenly, the Samaritan came, he saw him, he brushed him off, he nursed his wounds, he took him to an inn, he said, watch after this man, he paid for him. And I often thought, it's so interesting, what did that man carry with him? What story out of that experience did he forward and advance from his own life? Did he say, oh, I was walking, and all of a sudden robbers came and they mugged me, they beat me, they left me on the side of the road for dead? Or did he say, I was on my way and I was robbed and I was beaten and left on the side of the road, and a Samaritan came. He nursed my wounds, he took me to an inn, they nursed me. I got up from that bed a new person because someone cared enough to love me, to take me to the inn, to have someone watch over me. I've often wondered, and it's so interesting, what stories do we forward in advance that have occurred in our lives? What energy are we putting into the universal collective consciousness? What is it that we hold on to in our own lives? Do we hold on to those miraculous moments of grace? Those moments where there was a woman and she was in a little cafe and she was crying. And she was telling her friend, I have no money for rent. I have no money for food. And the friend said, well, how much money do you need? She goes, I need at least $600. And at that moment, she began to weep. The next day, her doorbell rang. She opened it. There was a gentleman at her door that gave her a check for $600 for her rent and food for her child. And her biggest concern is, I will no longer be able to protect my child. She said, oh my goodness, thank you. And he said, no, I want you to have this. In an instant, he was gone. He had overheard the conversation in the little cafe, and he knew that he could do that. The acts of grace, the invisible acts of power in the energy field, that people care, that people truly care. So when we look at grace and intuition and going within ourselves, and we, in our culture, we are so linear. We want the answers. We want the guarantees, at least a 30-day guarantee. We want these things. These are very important in our culture. But yet intuitively, when we act from that space of true connection with our higher power, we are sometimes guided and directed to do things that don't make any linear, rational sense of all, but make all the spiritual sense in the world. Every time we give to a purpose larger than ourselves, we create a space to receive. Every time we take higher ground, energetically, the universe smiles on us. Every time we open ourselves up and say, I of myself can do nothing, it's a power and a presence within me that does the work as I get my bloated nothingness, as Emerson said, out of the way, so the divine circuits can flow through. To peer out a window and judge by appearances with, and I do it myself, I think, oh, that one in the nipple must have really hurt. Oh my gosh, with that piercing. And we do this thing, and yet inside there is a human being that's learning and growing and expanding, and we need to create the space and absolutely stop judging and begin to realize our oneness, and that it is the unity and diversity, the oneness and multiplicity that binds us together as one. Our God is a God of oneness. And when we understand that, then your success truly makes mine possible. What you go through, I go through. What I go through, you go through. We had a thing on Nextdoor, and Nextdoor is, it's a website, and neighborhoods are now, we're in Vista Norte. Reverend Roger actually founded that, and it would start out with just, a trickling of people. And now it's a huge website, and all the neighborhood, if you have a question about anything, you put it on Nextdoor, and you get all these answers. It's just so wonderful that people care so much. And there was a gentleman who lost his dog, and he was from the movie Colony, and he came over, he was getting on everybody's website to say, I have a little schnauzer named Gunner, and he's been missing for a whole day, and I've been looking, and I can't find him. And then someone wrote in and said, well, I saw a gray-haired man with a ponytail and kind of an old blue car pick up a little dog of that description. So he opened the space, and he allowed himself to know that he was going to find his dog. And I wrote to him, and I said, I have a really good feeling about this. My little dog was in, the animal shelter for 24 hours. I know this feeling. I have a really good feeling about this. I've turned it over to our minister of prayer, and I'm just knowing that which you are seeking is seeking you right here and right now. He is in your arms. He's licking your face. He's wagging his tail. I did the whole thing. And then others, kept reassuring him. This went on for 4 days, and then he gave a group apology. Somebody wrote to him and said, would you quit posting about your missing dog? Every time I open that up, I see this. I'm just so tired of hearing about this. So he wrote an open apology, and I just wrote back and said, it's not about you. Just know that which you're seeking is seeking you. That your Gunner is in your arms, licking your face. Gunner is home. So we were all, the whole hundreds of people got involved. And we're knowing the truth for this little dog, missing now 4 days. And some people would, write things that weren't the most positive about what could happen. And he said, please don't write to me about what could happen. I'm looking for the highest outcome, and that is to have my little Gunner in my arms, safe at home. I thought to myself, why do people do that? Why, that does not serve. So it was interesting. We got an email on the 5th day that Gunnar had been returned, that indeed the gray-haired gentleman with the ponytail and the old blue car did, in fact, pick him up. He got word that his mother was ill. He took the little dog to his next-door neighbor and said, call this number. And he had already called it once, but then he had to go out of state to be with his mother, who made her transition. So he entrusted this little beautiful schnauzer to his next-door neighbor, and she thought, he's so cute. I think I'm going to keep him. He is just so cute. Isn't he adorable? Yeah, I think I'm just going to keep him. And when he got back from burying his mother and doing all of this, he couldn't believe it. She still had the dog. He said, this is not your dog. And so he got in touch with Tom and Tom's little Gunnar. But I want you to know, the energy that went out in the Palm Springs community, people that weren't even part of the website that got involved energetically, that the act of grace is that people care, that what happens to you on some level happens to me, that we have to keep knowing the truth and keep the highest outcome in our mind. Grace, intuition, and power is to get ourselves, that ego, out of the way so the power can flow through us and do what God does best by means of each and every one of us. I love the Gospel According to Peanuts, and it has Snoopy going, and he looks at his dog dish and he says, I'm so thirsty. I'm just so thirsty. This is empty. Why don't they fill my doggy dish with water? I'm just so thirsty. He goes up to the faucet, shows the big faucet. He's got it in his mouth and puts it under the faucet. He just stands there. He goes, I don't know what I'm doing. He goes, I'm just standing here waiting for a miracle. And it starts to rain. And it rains, and it rains, and it fills Snoopy's dog dish with wonderful fresh water. And then he goes into his doghouse, takes the water with him, puts his head out and says, I don't even pretend to comprehend this. I don't even pretend to comprehend this. This is a miracle. This is a miracle. So we don't have to comprehend it. We have to open the space for it. If we allow the energies of the universe to flow through. And I loved it. Barry sent me the beautiful piece on Isaac Perlman, and I have shared that throughout the years, the beautiful, since 1995, when he, that he had polio as a child, and he is the world-renowned violinist. And when he goes on stage, it's a big deal. And he has the braces on his legs, so he has to go on stage, he has to unhook the braces, he's got to put one foot in front, and then he begins to play his violin, and he is just impeccable. He is the world-renowned violinist. And the story goes that as he got a few bars into his concert, and everyone was waiting, just with bated breath, and they knew this ritual of him coming on with the two crutches, putting the crutches aside, undoing the braces on his legs, putting the braces aside, putting one foot in front of the other, and then begin to play the violin. And the violin is one of my favorite instruments, especially, all the Celtic music that we love. And within 2 or 3 bars, a string broke. And everyone kind of, because it just sounded like this amazing vibration throughout the auditorium. Everyone knew a string broke. They knew that he would have to stop the concert, or he would have to get up and leave, that he would have to have a new violin, or he would have to have someone restring it. But he just kept on playing. And he seemed to attune himself to 3 strings. And sounds came out of that violin that weren't even possible. That came through the energy that he was channeling. And as he channeled the energy of this amazing concert with 3 strings, people were in awe. They had never heard such sounds, such vibrations, such frequencies. They were wafted up into higher realms. And when he completed, everybody just got to their feet, and they shook the whole theater in their applause. And he took his little violin bow, said, please, please. He said, I am an artist. And he said, yes, it's wonderful to have the 4 strings and to give from that place. But sometimes when that can't be done, you have to give with what is left. And what was left was 3 strings. Thank you. He seated himself, got his braces on, his crutches, and he left. And what I know and why I love throughout the years and sharing this is that sometimes we have to just deal with what's left and make the music out of what is left and create an energy out of what is left. And we can never go back, nor can we judge how it used to be. This is the open moment. This is the eternal moment. This is the moment of grace and going within to our intuition, to the secret place of the Most High, to pray to our Father, Mother, God in secret, and to know that we are acknowledged openly by the outward demonstrations of our lives, to know that a whole community can get involved in a little lost dog, to give comfort, to give energy, to give this wonderful thing called love, because what happens to you happens to me. And the invisible acts of power is overhearing the things and judging by appearances, and suddenly have that absolutely explode in our face of judging someone because of the way they look or how they choose to be noticed in the world. And I was a youth advisor for years, and I noticed the loudest ones with the rainbow hair and the mohawks were the most serious students, that were the ones that went within, that really wanted our way of life when I used to teach at the various camps for the youth. It is the energy of looking past appearances, conditions, and effects when it is the most difficult. It is the recognition that each of us is a Good Samaritan, and each of us is the recipient of a Good Samaritan. Each of us have received the love and the energy brought forth by our caring community, and the opportunity that we have to step up to the plate, to step up in a way that we have never quite stepped up before, because we are all one. The grace is the beauty, that we didn't do anything but by the act of grace and the energy of all those in our energy field that lift us to that intuitive place that allows us to know we are one. Through this oneness do we live and move and have our being. Through this oneness do we connect. To this oneness do we have the opportunity to look at the crises, the gift, and the consequence. Whatever the crisis is, there is a universal loving presence in the universe that will bring in people, places, and things to assist us. That gift is to be open, and the consequence is, how will I hold it? What story will I tell about it? And what energy will I forward and advance in it? So this morning, as we look at our own lives, the grace, the intuition, the power, the invisible acts of power that go before us every single day in our lives, to be grateful, to get our attention so that we can feel the energy of God, whatever we conceive our God to be, whatever name we put on it. So today, I greet you not quite as the world greets you, but with profound esteem in the recognition that we are what? Going higher yet. Where are we going? Higher yet. Where? Higher yet. And so it is. God bless you.